What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here at the MJ SportsCast. That is Jerry Yang. I'm Mike Tang. Jerry, how you doing today, man?
Doing great, man. Today is a very exciting day. Lots of NFL changes because it's Tuesday and it's the franchise tag deadline. So last day for NFL stars to get franchise tagged. I think the biggest one was Devontae Adams. He was like the first one to get tagged. So that I think set off a lot of domino moves that we'll talk about. But pretty exciting day for free agency. Yeah.
So let's kind of talk about today's breaking news in the NFL. First was the Aaron Rodgers signing with the Green Bay Packers. Here he signed a pretty expensive contract, I would say.
So
Um,
actually, he didn't. Yeah. So originally, it was reported he signed 200 million for 4 years with I think 180 something guaranteed. But then Pat McCaffrey actually tweeted out later and was
mhm.
actually liked by Aaron Rodgers to say that's not true. And then Rodgers tweeted out saying, "Yes, I'm staying with the Packers, but there was no deal done yet." Right. So I think it was somebody jumped the gun basically saying that a deal is done, but it sounds like he's staying, but it's not definite yet. So
Yeah, it does sound like he's staying here because it felt like a foregone conclusion that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams were leaving the Packers, but apparently they looked at other teams and their situations and realized they had a pretty darn good situation in Green Bay. So I don't blame them for staying put here and just kind of letting their ego kind of stay within them and just stay with this franchise because I think it is a winning franchise. And they also realize that if they try to go elsewhere, say in the AFC, they're going to be competing against a lot of the better quarterbacks out there because most of the great quarterbacks are in the other conference, right?
yep.
Um, Also, another great quarterback that's going to another conference is Russell Wilson here. That guy has been traded over to the Denver Broncos, right? And
Oh,
man, that's pretty groundbreaking news, would you say?
yeah, that's huge, man. Like I think the Broncos were originally tied to Aaron Rodgers because the Packers offensive line coach from last year actually became their head coach, right? Nathaniel Hackett, I think was his name. Got traded, right, or got signed rather by Denver. So a lot of people thought Aaron Rodgers was going to go join his offensive line coach and start a new franchise there. But instead, it sounds like they made a move and big push for Russell Wilson, and it paid off, right? So I think Russell Wilson and a fourth round pick will be going to Denver, and then Seattle is getting Drew Lock, Nathan Fant, Shelby Harris, two first round picks, two second round picks, and a fifth round pick. That's a lot of picks going to Seattle. I think the two first rounders is basically to make up for the Jamal Adams trade. I think they lost two first round when they picked him up. So
Hmm.
pretty big news. And kind of glad to see him out of the NFC West. And I think the Seahawks are going to be better positioned in the future, but they're going to have some growing pains. I think without Russell Wilson there.
Who really won out in this trade? Who do you think, out of just initially looking at this?
Oh, like Russell Wilson's like a generational quarterback, right? I think Denver's actually, I feel like they are a quarterback away from being a competitive team. But with that being said, they did give up a lot, right? I think Seattle raked it in, with all those picks. I think they're set up better for the long term.
Hmm.
Um, but Denver's better set up, I think, for the immediate term, right? They can probably be really competitive next season, and I think their division got a lot tougher, right? I think the Chargers with Justin Herbert and obviously KC really tough, and the Raiders, right, with Josh McDaniels. It's not an easy division to win, So I think that's why I think they had to make a move, and I think relating to Niners news, we actually play the AFC next season, right? So, and Denver's gonna be one of them. But who won out? I think immediately. I think Denver won out, and I think they got the best player in the trade, right? That's always a good thing. But if things don't work out in the next few years with Russell Wilson, they could be hurting for a while, right? Because they don't have picks to kind of replace what they've lost there. And Russell Wilson's getting old, right? So I think it's hard to say. What do you think, One Out?
I think Denver really won out on this because we just really don't know what those picks will equate to for the Seahawks. And if it doesn't equate to a franchise quarterback, then I think giving up Russell Wilson was a little bit too much for that
Mhm.
franchise here. But if it does, then I think it's going to be okay for them. Um,
It's worth the gamble, though, right? I mean, he's 33 years old, so
yeah.
he's not like too old yet. It's not like Aaron Rodgers at 38.
Do you
And
think Russell Wilson lost a step or two this past season?
I think the finger injury did something to him, and also I think he was having a lot of conflicts with Pete Carroll, so his performance suffered a little bit, but he still can make the throws, and he did really well against the Niners both times, right, that we played him. So yes, he lost a step, but I think he's still, I would say, top five quarterback, top 10 quarterback easily.
Yeah, I think it was a move that Denver really had to make because they could. I don't think they're going to find a quarterback like that in free agency. I don't think they're going to find anyone remotely like that in the draft here. And none of their current quarterbacks on the roster were going to put them over the hump there. And just them being able to give up Drew Lock and several first round picks for a guy like Russell Wilson, I think it's a steal for Denver. And I think it's going to be a headache for the AFC. I think the teams that have lost in the AFC are teams in the AFC West, such as the Raiders. I think they're in a whole deep load of trouble now. And I think the Chargers too, although the Chargers do have, some good players on their team, but now they're looking, at Mahomes, and they're also looking at Russell Wilson as a barrier for them to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Chargers did make a big signing today too. They signed Mike Williams for $60 million. So that means, he's they're trying to make a move as well, right, to stay relevant. But they have a good quarterback. They have Justin Herbert, I think, is a good long-term quarterback for them on the rookie contract still. So I think they're going to be really competitive for the long term. But I agree with you on the Raiders. I think Derek Carr is now the worst quarterback in that division, easily, right? So I think the Raiders need to make a move too eventually. Maybe not this coming year, but I have to see if Carr is really worth being in that division.
How do you think this trade turns around the NFC West in terms of how competitive it will be here and maybe just how other teams are looking, at the quarterbacks in this division?
Yeah, I mean it's huge, right? Because I think now the Seahawks is probably set up better for the long term with the picks, with Noah Fant there, right? But Drew Lock's a backup quarterback. He's not going to be your franchise star anymore. So I think automatically, I think the Seahawks going to be on the bottom of the division, with
Mm,
us close second, actually, right? Because we don't know if Trey Lance has what it takes right now. And there's still a lot of unknowns with some of our free agents, right? Like Lincoln Tomlinson, we don't know if he's coming back. Debo probably coming back, don't know yet, right? So there's a lot of question marks, but I think we're going to be, third. And I think Kyler Murray is a question mark actually with the Cardinals. It sounds like he wants a contract before the draft. So if he doesn't
mm.
come back, I think that changes the equation of the division. But right now, I think the Rams are still on top, probably followed by the Cardinals and then us. But it could easily change, right? It really unknown because of Trey Lance and how Trey Lance will perform um, with us. So it's really up to him. And I think Kyle Shanahan really took that chance, right, with Trey Lance, and talking to Jimmy G or talking about Jimmy G and how his trade value, I think, goes up, right? Because today you have two quarterbacks that are off the market now. Like no one's going to sign Russell Wilson, obviously. Aaron Rodgers going back. You know, um, I think now Jimmy G, maybe Kyler are the 2 best potential quarterbacks that could be traded, right? And there's a lot of talks now that potentially Jimmy G could get us a second or first round pick even because of all these moves. And it seems like teams are desperate to get quarterbacks, right? I mean, you saw this move of Russell Wilson. We're not going to get a similar deal for Jimmy G as Russell Wilson. Seattle got for Russell,
Hmm.
but that really ups the market a little bit, you know. And then once I think Aaron Rodgers, if he does get the 200 million for 4 years or anything close to that, I think that makes Jimmy G's contract seem like a steal, right? With 25 million versus that 50 million, it's a huge difference. So we'll see. I think I'm just glad Russell Wilson's out of there because we don't do well against Seattle when he's there. You know, so that definitely helps the Niners.
What do you think went wrong with the Wilson and Seahawks organization here? We kind of knew a little bit about the conflict he had with Pete Carroll, the head coach. But, when we look at our current history, usually when there's conflict, um, the player usually wins out, right? Or if you try to keep the coach, the franchise ends up losing more games after you give away that player. For example, say the Patriots, giving away Brady in favor of keeping Belichick and his style of coaching. I think the Patriots maybe lost a Super Bowl or two just from losing Brady, right? But what do you think happened here? It can't just be because of losing that Super Bowl, right? When he threw that interception in the end zone during their last run. But do you know what happened to their relationship?
So we don't know, right? I think that's the biggest thing. I think Seattle kept it pretty tight to the vest. From what I heard, it's similar to the Packers situation with Aaron Rodgers, actually, and that franchise friction that created. But Aaron Rodgers was obviously more outspoken, and a lot more came out from that. Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson were pretty tight to the vest, so we actually don't know what happened there. And maybe after this trade is finalized, and I think the 14th is when these trades actually get finalized, we might hear more from Russell Wilson. Maybe he'll be more outspoken, talk a little bit more what happened and why that franchise or why that relationship rather isn't working out for him, right? So I think we'll wait and see. I think this will all come out soon. But Seattle did a pretty good job of not leaking this type of information, right? Like we knew there was some type of, you know, conflict between Carroll and Russell, but no one has details of it. There was no rumored, confrontation or anything like that. So I guess props to the Seahawks for being able to keep that in house, right? But I think we'll find out later, in a couple of weeks, and we'll know.
It can't be because of shortages of offensive weapons, right? Because
Yeah,
Seattle does have Lockett
yeah,
and DK Metcalf there. So it really can't be because of that. So I'm really going to be interested to hear, what transpires later, after the trade is made.
right. And I think he's going to a good situation. There's a lot of weapons in Denver, right? They have Jerry Judy, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton. Like he's walking into like a pretty receiver rich team. I actually thought Tom Brady might have gone to Denver last season or 2 seasons ago, rather, because they have so many weapons, right? And such a set franchise there. So I think Russell Wilson's walking to a potential, definitely a playoff winning team, but a team that can probably go deep in the playoffs, I think. And their defense is pretty solid with Denver as well, right? So we'll see how it goes, but yeah, it's a good move for him too, for sure.
Vic Fangio is saying something out there. Now you get a quarterback, huh?
Poor guy. Yeah,
It's
maybe
like you
for
it's like you expect
him.
me to play Drew Lock. We lose all these games and I'm the scapegoat,
Uh,
and I get fired and now you get a quarterback. Okay. I see you.
I know, right? Like they did him dirty. For sure, that sucks. I feel for him, But it is what it is, right? As the old saying goes.
Yeah. Let's kind of talk about some of our local teams out here, the 49ers. They've had a lot of turnover in terms of coaching, but let's kind of talk about some of their additions recently. Special teams coordinator Brian Schneider was recently hired. A few notable ones, as well as Brian Greasy, is coming from the broadcaster's booth over to be a quarterbacks coach. And that's kind of going in reverse order from what we've seen lately, going from coaching um, to the booth here. So maybe Brian Greasy is looking for more of a coordinator or maybe possibly a head coaching job in the future by going this route. Some other moves also is Brian Fleury being hired as a tight ends coach, Leonard Hankerson as wide receiver coach, and most notably, there's no offensive coordinator listed for this year yet. Do you think all these moves is going to hamper the 49ers this season,
No
Jerry?
way. I think Brian Snyder, special teams coach, is an immediate upgrade, right? Like we know Tim Hightower wasn't doing well with us, and then he went off to the Bears. So Snyder was special teams coordinator and special teams coach for the Seattle Seahawks during
Hmm.
that 11-year playoff run that they had. So he's definitely a very experienced special teams coach and probably knows a lot about the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll's tendencies. So I think you get some insider info from him on there as well. So and then Brian Greasy, I think, is an interesting choice, right? But he was, with I think either the Falcons or the Washington, I guess, football team, right? At the time, it was the Redskins. I think it was with the organization when Kyle was there. So he kind of knows Kyle's system. So in some ways, it wasn't that much of a surprise. And then I think Brian Fleury was an interesting choice. A Titans coach is actually a really hard job because they have to know a lot of what the schemes are, a lot what the wide receivers are doing, and things like that. So I think that's not an easy position to fill. And I think Brian Fleury is actually a really, really good choice there. So I think overall it's positive, net positive, but not having the offensive coordinator is really interesting. I thought. I'm thinking Anthony Lynn is going to be like a unofficial, offensive coordinator that will be with them in the long run, right? I think he's kind of trying him out now as that running back coach, whatever. Um, but then he's also what like a special assistant, So he'll definitely I think fit into that offensive coordinator position if he does well this year. So we'll see.
So you really don't think all these different voices coming in will affect, I guess, the systems that are being placed here? There are some people are concerned about it. There's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of new faces there, and we've had a lot of continuity the past few years, especially with our running game and the other key positions too. So I guess if you're not really too worried, the other fans shouldn't be too worried either, huh?
Yeah, because I think you have Kyle, right? That's gonna be your rock, continuity there, and he's really hands-on with the offense. So I think that's why OC is not listed because he's gonna try to play that role again. I think we do need some new coaches in there. We haven't won a Super Bowl, right? It's not like this is a team that is a multiple Super Bowl winning team, So maybe this is exactly what we need to get us over that hump. So I wouldn't be worried. I'm actually really excited to see, especially if the special teams get better or not. I felt like we lost one or two games because of special teams last year, right? At least two games I can name off the top of my head, right? So I think that's a big improvement, and then I think fundamentally was what lost it for us too. It wasn't like any schemes or anything like that. I think a lot of players just weren't prepared for those positions. And I think someone like Brian Snyder rather, can go in and make those quick adjustments. So
Yeah. All right. We talked about some of the movement between our coaching staff and some of the key quarterbacks this week here in the league. But there's some other notable news here. Calvin Ridley recently suspended for betting on games. How did he get caught doing this?
It was kind of funny and sad at the same time. Is I heard it was his Twitter account. He followed DraftKings, and then he was talking about betting on games a lot, right? And then I think he was
Yeah,
on that platform, and then that somehow got out, and then now he's suspended for a full season. So it's really reckless of him. And then on Twitter, he kind of admitted that he did it as well. He said he only betted like $1,500, but there's contracts that say you can't be betting on games, and he violated that. So no matter what the amount is, it kind of shows me his immaturity as well, because he's suspended instead of apologizing for it. He's trying to downplay it a little bit. And also, if I was his lawyer, if there's any legal action that he wants to take, that's not a good thing to say. It's not good to say that admit your crime, essentially, right? That you've done that. So, and oh, we have What's Up G that tuned in, and he said he bet on Hard Rock app. Oh, okay, so like the Hard Rock casino app. Okay, good to know. Yeah, so he probably got caught doing that there. So, I mean, what's your thoughts on it? Or do you think it's kind of ridiculous in some ways? Because a lot of people are pointing towards other suspensions being harsher, or less harsh, rather, for things like assault, abuse, and things like that. But when it comes to this betting thing, as well as I think other incidents that are a little bit less harsh, they get a stronger penalty. So I mean,
yeah.
what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's really detrimental if you're betting on the games that you play
Mm,
there. Maybe a little less harsh if you're betting on the other games out there in the league. But I think the rule is in place for a reason, right? But at the same time, I could see a lot of other players doing the same thing and not getting caught. And
mm,
unfortunately, he did there. There's just so many platforms that you can choose from to bet on games there. Even Richard Sherman in his podcast, he promotes, a betting, fantasy app. And
yeah.
he even chooses matchups and games there. I'm not sure if he actually does it himself. He probably not going to admit that, but he does choose his matchups there,
Mhm.
which I find kind of interesting. So it's just really unfortunate that really got caught, and that's his fault. That's his own wrongdoing.
Yeah, and then What's Up G has a good point. It goes to the integrity of the league. I mean, that's why Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame, right? He bet on the games that he coached and played in. So I think it had a direct impact to the games. And he said that he only bet on his own team, so it wasn't a conflict of interest. But how do you know that, right? Unless they really release the details of those bets, and maybe they could now because it's on the app, but even then, contracts say you can't bet on the games, and I do agree that goes the integrity of the game. So and it's kind of like what was up said here is also similar to inside training or trading, knowing non-public information, right? So not only are you going against integrity, you're kind of cheating as well, right? So
Yeah. No, I 100% agree on that. All right, so let's kind of move on to the NBA. The Warriors have been on a spiraling downswing ever since the All-Star break here. They won the first game back against Portland, and we thought that was going to be a pretty good game for them to kind of leapfrog for the second half. That hasn't been the case. They've been losing quite a few games out there. They don't look in sync. They've been blowing games. They blew the game against the Lakers on Saturday night there. LeBron going for about 54 points.
mhm.
They decided not to even bring any of their players to Denver on Monday here, and they lost in the fourth quarter. So they're 0-4 on their road trip. They're looking down on the standings, and you have Memphis catching up to them. Dallas is not too far away. What do you think is coming up for the Warriors here? Do you think maybe having Draymond coming back. It looks like Wiseman is cleared to play in the G League pretty soon. Do you think these reinforcements will be able to kind of keep the Warriors in the top three in the West?
Mhm. Yeah, no, I'm in kind of worried mode, right? I don't think I'm in panic mode yet, but definitely in worried mode. It sounds like Draymond's coming back on 3/14, but I mean that's still 4 games away with 14 games left after that. And I think the Warriors have a serious chance of missing the playoffs if this streak continues. Or maybe be in that was it the 3 game playoff mini playoff, right? I don't want to get in that situation, right? I think the Warriors, not having Iguodala there, I think make a big difference as well. And then having Clay back in some ways also disrupted the chemistry a little bit because that's where I think Jordan Poole started playing really poorly once Clay came back. But yeah, we'll see. I think What's Up G has a point here, and what I was about to say is, should Draymond be in the Hall of Fame? His loss is proving that they're not the same without him. That last point is exactly what I was gonna say. Not having Draymond there, not having Iguodala there, you're losing your leaders and your guys that can really motivate and keep up the intensity. And I guess should he be in the Hall of Fame is probably a different discussion. But I think he's worthy of it at least. We'll see as the rest of his career progresses. But yeah, I think I'm worried. I don't know about you. Are you worried or you're kind of keeping it cool for now?
I think it's at that keep it cool for now here, just because we don't have Draymond Green on the floor. If Draymond was on the floor and we had like Clay, playing almost every game here, and we had most of our roster intact and this was happening, okay, then it's time to panic. But we don't have Draymond for what, almost 2 months. We haven't had Wiseman this whole season. Iguodala has played maybe a third of the games at most. So I think we're going to be fine. I think it all counts on Draymond. We talked about this before in previous episodes. It really depends on Draymond and how he plays. If he plays at a high level, if he plays at a defensive player of the year level coming back, I think the Warriors will be fine and they'll be, looking at the Suns in the Western Conference Finals. But if Draymond doesn't come back up to par here, I think the Warriors will be a first or second round exit in the playoffs here. That's my take.
Yeah, that's why I think I was worried but not panicked yet. I guess there's different levels of panic, but I'm kind of in that worry zone mainly because Memphis passed us up, right? I didn't think that would happen, given our how wide of a lead we had initially, but now they're ahead of us by half a game. So, and the Jazz are kind of nibbling on our heels now. They're 2.5 games back from us. So if we keep dropping in the standings, it's gonna be tough, And I think we have pretty tough games coming up too. Like if we play the Clippers today, I think we'll be okay. Tomorrow is what? Where are we playing? Oh no, it was a back to back, right? So we're playing the Clippers, and then we're gonna play the Bucks. We play the Nuggets again. Play the Wizard will be fine. Celtics will be tough. Spurs will be tough, right? So these next few games are not exactly pushovers, So
Yeah.
we'll have to see, and the 14th, which is a Wizards game, sounds like Draymond will be back. Fortunately, it's against the Wizards and the Celtics right after that on Wednesday. We'll have to see how he does in those 2 games. But yeah, if like you said, he's looking better. But James Wiseman, I'm hearing that he's probably not going to come back and be at full potential. It sounds like it's probably going to be very limited minutes, and there's a lot of talks internally that he's not going to be contributing much this season. What are your thoughts on that? It sounds like Wiseman's kind of a bust, don't you think?
No, I don't think that. I think it's the organization kind of tempering expectations for Wiseman and not putting a lot of pressure on him publicly, right? So I think that's what they're trying to convey to the public and to the media here, just so they don't expect him to come in and start contributing right away. But I can see him, kind of coming in there and being a factor, right, and putting in 15 to 20 minutes a night there. So I don't know. We're gonna
Play it basically.
Yeah, I think he'll add some depth, to that lineup. So I'm kind of looking forward to having him on. And he's still fairly young. He's a 20-year-old guy. He's fairly athletic. I think he should be able to come back from that injury right now. It's been, geez, almost a year, right, since he got hurt during the regular season. But I think James Wiseman will be fine. I'm just more worried about Draymond and what he's going to be able to contribute and how his conditioning will be, moving forward.
Yeah, I think we lost GP2 for a while as for the last few games too. I thought he made a big difference, especially earlier in the season, right? So it's yeah, I think there's a lot of factors on why the Warriors have been on this slump.
Yeah, what's up, G? He mentioned, is Draymond Green a Hall of Famer? If Draymond Green right now doesn't play a single game the rest of his career, do you think he's a Hall of Famer? Based on all the stuff that he's contributed to the NBA there. Also knowing that he's not a stats guy. His stats don't look good at all, but he does have those 3 championship rings. He does have those 5 championship appearances. Do you think Draymond is a Hall of Famer if he doesn't play a single game?
I mean, he made the All-Star game this year and missed most of the season, right? So I think the respect for him is definitely out there. So I think he'll get in. Not sure if he'll be like first ballot or anything like that, but I think the Basketball Hall of Fame is a little bit different than like baseball, for example, or football even. I think more people get in, and it's kind of like a Basketball Hall of Fame, not a NBA Hall of Fame, right? So I think some college stars actually get in too. So I think based on his performance and like you said, all the championships, all the All Star appearances, I think he'll get in. I think he'll get it. Even if his career ends now, I think he'll be probably a shoe in there. So that's my
Okay.
personal opinion. But
So you're looking at
I mean,
Draymond Green getting in here. Curry's a lot to get in.
yeah,
Klay Thompson, do you think he's getting in?
TBD, I guess, right? Because I think that injury really hindered him. So maybe, I think a lot of these guys, I think they deserve to get in. Like Clay, I think deserves to get in, right? I think the heart he's shown, his career overall, I think has been really good. But it's also what have you done for me lately? If these guys can win a championship without Durant, I think they're a shoe in. If they can win another championship rather without Durant, they're definitely a shoe in. But right now, TBD because of that. I think a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on Durant. So that's probably why a lot of people are questioning this, right?
Yeah, and I also feel the Basketball Hall of Fame is not as serious. I don't know if serious is the right word there,
Prestige
but
is not there. Is that what you're
yeah, it's
saying?
not. Yeah, it's just not as prestigious as the MLB Hall of Fame for some reason. You
Yeah.
know,
'Cause it's easier to get in, right? What's weird though, I guess it's easy to get hard because Bill Russell just got in last year, and you would think someone like him was in a long time ago, right? So it's I guess kind of interesting how that works out. But yeah, I agree with you. People don't talk about the Basketball Hall of Fame as much as they do the other two for some reason. So interesting.
Yep. All right. So let's kind of finally talk about Major League Baseball here. Well, there's actually not much news coming out of there. It looks like it's deadlocked with all the players and the MLBPA here. And my City Connect jersey is collecting dust in my closet. Haven't been wearing that during that off season. I was hoping to wear it fairly soon, but it looks like the player union they're trying to agree on some rule changes within the league there. They talked about it before, pitch clocks, supposedly 14-second pitch clocks with the bases empty and a 19-second pitch clock with runners on, and then also some banned shifts, right? With
Mhm.
with with very big bases on the field. We've seen this. We've seen this same song and dance before in terms of the pitch clocks. I wonder if they're really going to implement something like this in the near future. What's your take?
They did it in the minor leagues, right? So I think it worked out pretty well there. It sounds like the players are union agreed to the rules. It's kind of funny how like all these rule changes they all agreed to. Right now it's just money, right? They all agree on money now. I think that's the biggest thing. So, and What's Up G makes a good point. The pitch clock only works if the batter stays in the box. I think there's going to be some rules around that probably. But it seems like it was okay when it came to the minors. So they test ran it. Sounds like it's okay. And then the biggest thing I want to talk about is actually banning shifts, right? I was watching I was on Twitter and saw like a clip from Buster Posey, I think a couple years ago, talking about how he's all for it. He doesn't like shifts, mainly because he thinks about a guy like Brandon Crawford, where if there's a play that's made down the middle, Crawford can make an amazing play, right? And try to get it out and at least try for it, add some intrigue to the game. If there's a shift and the guy's just standing there and catching the ball, And then also he talked about Brandon Belt and a guy like him because of a shift. Now he feels pressured to get dingers, right? Like get home runs instead of trying to, get like singles or doubles on certain spots. And it's not that easy to kind of change directions, right? Once it's shifted. So I thought that was an interesting argument. And I thought, you know, not having it versus having it definitely is a big impact to how you watch a game, right? I thought it was kind of strange when it was first implemented. I think this is a fairly recent thing, but how would they enforce it will be kind of interesting. Like, what if someone does shift? Do you automatically get base or something? So I'm kind of curious to see how the league plays out, right? But I'm kind of for it. I kind of don't like the shift in some ways, um, similar to what Posey talked about. So I guess what do you think about it?
No, I hate the shift, honestly, just because of the pure reason why batters don't hit for average anymore, or they don't try to hit up the middle, right? If they know there's going to be a defender or an infielder right there, what's what's going to motivate someone to kind of put bat against the ball and try to hit it through the hole,
Yeah.
right? They're just going to try to get in the air, and that's why we see so many strikeouts. That's why we see all these batting averages plummeting
Hmm.
throughout the years here. And I think it's really bad for baseball, to be honest with you. I think baseball is more pure when, you're able to kind of hit for average and try to, kind of hit line drives throughout the field there, as opposed to, going just full on launch angle and trying to hit home runs all the time. And it's really an all or nothing approach, right? And I think banning shifts would be great for the game. Definitely.
And then What's Up G, I think agrees with you. He says, "I like the no shift. I hate to see hard hit line drives to right field only to get thrown out at first base." What do you think about that?
No, I completely agree with that. It's just ugly baseball, you
Yeah.
know?
It's just so boring, right? Like sometimes when you watch, you're like, okay, well, he has his whole right side taken away from him. So
Yeah, I mean, like, other sports organizations have implemented, these type of defensive rule changes in the past, right? Like in the NBA, college basketball, they have illegal defenses that
Mhm.
you can't implement. You can't just stay in the paint, all day with in some cases here. So, it evolves, right? So, sometimes players and organizations, they try to exploit the rules, and then now the league has to fight back and counter exploit them in that sense.
I think baseball more than any other sport, people exploit the rules. Like thinking about what sticky balls last season, and banging on drums from the Astros. Is this weird that, or banging on trash cans, right? It's kind of weird that baseball's a type of sport
Yeah.
now where people find a lot of loopholes in. But I
Yeah.
do agree with you on the rules, though. I mean, look at the NBA. They move the 3-point line a few times. So.
Yeah. In baseball, the game is just so hard to begin with that just finding any sort of edge, you know, even if it gives you, I don't know, a few more home runs or it increases your batting average by a little bit there, sometimes that's worth it
Mhm.
for the player here, as opposed to other sports where it's pretty, you can just kind of physically move a guy or whatever. In
Yeah.
baseball, it's just a whole lot tougher.
Yeah, it's kind of a finesse sport, right? Where things have to go perfectly. I thought it was interesting that there was a proposal for robot umpires,
Mm.
but that was rejected for the next 2 years. But I thought that would be interesting, at least to explore in the minor leagues. But it sounds like they're not even exploring in the minor leagues. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? A lot of times that really frustrates me, right? When a ump gets something wrong, and you saw with the end of the Giants season that
Who's rejecting that? The league or the player union?
it was the league that rejected it. The players' union proposed it, right? But the league
Yeah,
rejected.
I would favor towards the players wanting that. There, you just
Yeah,
want to get the call right on a consistent
exactly.
manner, right? And I think that's what the batters are really frustrated with. Even the pitchers too. Inconsistency in the strike zone.
Yeah.
Every single game. And then it changes right from umpire to umpire. Every strike zone is different. I think you just want some continuity. With the zone there, and it's just hasn't happened, and there's just so many complaints. So, I do see the league automating the strike zone sometime. I just don't see it coming up within the next 5 years or so.
I mean, you have the technology to do it. You
Yeah,
see, like tennis replays now have RF chips on there, and it's just a barcode, right? So it's not like when you lose a baseball, all of a sudden you're losing out tons of money. You're adding a barcode, and you have scanners on the plate, right, on the box, wherever you can easily implement that. I think, but it's just I think baseball is very traditional in that sense, where they'll want to take away that intrigue in some ways. So, but yeah, like you said, I'm all for it. I just hate calls getting wrong. So
yeah. MLB is very similar to the NFL in a sense in which they're very slow to change, right? Just like we talked about with the NFL, they still, they use what chains to get first to like determine what's a first down when they could put like a chip in their football to determine that there. So MLB is very slow to change. Um, they were slow to replay to begin with here, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to take them a very long time to adapt automation to the strike zone as well.
yeah, it's gonna be a while for sure.
All
All right,
right,
should
let's
we
move
move on?
on to our picks of the week.
Let's do it. I think we only have one, which is tonight's game: the Warriors at home versus the Clippers, the LA Clippers, at -3. So Warriors are actually heavily favored, right? And the over under is 219. Who do you have?
I picked against the Warriors the last time we were on here, and I was correct, unfortunately, but I think I'm going to pick the Warriors at home here, even with that -7 line against the Clippers. I just think they're going to bounce back here, coming back to chase. I think um, Kerr, he's going to come back to Curry's preferred rotation minutes,
Mm.
meaning that Curry will play all the first quarter and all the third quarter, right? And then play halfway of the fourth here. And I just think that's going to help the Warriors in the long term there. As long as Curry's happy, I think he's able to produce that way. Um, but just my intuition, I think the Warriors will blow out the Clippers tonight. What do you think?
So I guess why did they go with the other minutes change before if it worked before? For Curry, do you know why they did that to begin with, or do you see the logic? I guess of why they did that.
I think they wanted to avoid having Curry play a lot of minutes. Well, they wanted to avoid having Curry sit on the bench for too long,
Mm.
right? That's why they wanted to stagger his minutes there. But Curry he likes the continuity of playing, and playing all throughout that first and third quarter, as opposed to playing, sitting, and then playing again, right?
Right.
So I could see his logic behind it, but I think it's going to help the Warriors. I really do.
Mm.
But I think the Warriors will find a way to beat the Clippers by double digits tonight here. I think they're on a mission to get back to be a top 3 seed in the West here, and I'm going to pick the over in this one at 219. What's your take?
Yeah, that's interesting because I kind of agree that it's kind of hard to stay warm even, right? If you are constantly on and off the bench and gain those continuity minutes,
Yeah.
is a better idea. But yeah, so you know what? I'm gonna go the contrarian pick today, right? I'm gonna go Clippers +7, mainly because all the games have been really tough for the Warriors lately. You know, you're not gonna have GP2, Otto Porter's out, obviously no Draymond and Wiseman, right? I think Clay's playing at least, so you have that going. But the Clippers beat the Lakers a couple weeks ago, right? So a couple days ago. So I think they're not like a pushover team. So 7, I think, is way too much. So I'm gonna go with Clippers +7. I'll agree with you on the over under. I think 219 is pretty low. Maybe it's a trap, right?
Hmm.
Actually, I'll take the under, right? Because I think 219 is way too low. I don't know why it's so low. And the
Yeah.
Warriors tend to score a lot, so there might be a reason for that. So just kind of take the under on that as a kind of off shot chance there. So
All right. Very good. So let's go through our shout outs for the show here.
yeah, thanks. What's up, G? I think What's up, G? Our admin on Twitch and Twitter, so or YouTube rather. So thanks a lot for helping us out. What's up, G? Much appreciated.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's our show for this week. We'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.